Hi. There's my cat. There's one of my cats. But thank you for joining, everyone, for this impromptu art stream. Anyway, I was getting a lot of questions about how I do art stuff or how I was doing my figure drawing because I drew I drew this. I drew this thing and posted it on Twitter. And I was getting a lot of questions about some lines that I was doing, so I thought, why don't I go through the whole dang process? So, I know that we haven't done art streams on SSS before, but why not? Why don't we just do it? I don't know how well this is going to go because it's really hard to focus on a drawing while streaming and talking to people and thinking about what you should be explaining and all the rules and blah, blah, but let's talk figure drawing. Here is, I should say not safe for work because there's going to be some nips and some butts. Oh, so I'm sorry about my voice. I don't know what's happening. I think it's because I'm tired. I was getting a lot of questions about these. I haven't drawn at all today, so this is going to be fun too. I was getting a lot of questions about these lines, these like horizontal lines and these little, verts here, these little diags. Joy is currently batting around a flashlight I have on my desk because Jacob and I had a mouse problem not too long ago and I had to pull out the flashlight. This is Joy, everyone. If you want to see, you get her butt. This is Joy. So let's talk about art here. I'm going to be drawing from photo reference. This one was some photo reference. I can show you the reference. As the title says at the bottom of the stream, I got all the references for these figure drawings from this site called onairvideo.com. You might know them from Crocus Cafe, which is a great YouTube channel that had to stop being on YouTube because they kept having too many boobies. They have an amazing online resource. I'll pull it over just so y'all can see. They have a whole model index and it's great. They have men, women, people of color. They have very petite ladies. They have plus size people. They have a bunch of dynamic poses. They have people who are more muscular. They have people who are more gaunt. It's a really good resource. And if you click any of the models, it'll pull up just a bunch of photos. So let's get to it. The reference I used for this, right, is that one. So I'm going to actually use this as an example of what the lines I was doing were. So I'm going to pull out a red color because it's easy to see. Well, I shouldn't say that. Very colorblind people. Let's do this bright blue. This model is, and I think I'm going to be drawing her again later. It's Artistic Physique is the one that I was using because I wanted to study, some musculature and some bone here. So, I was getting questions about these lines, these horizontal lines, these vertical lines. So when I'm drawing, figure drawing, I think here I started with this arm. I basically start with a bunch of diagonals because it's easier to comprehend than like the angle of a curve. So I started from like the start and end point and I did this diagonal this way, right? So when I draw, I'll draw like the general angle of an arm like that and I'm drawing over the reference so that you guys can see kind of where my head is. I don't obviously draw over the image when I'm doing it. I'll try to draw something from reference as I normally would after this. This is just the explanation of what I'm doing. Or again, where my brain process is. So then I have a start point here and a start point here and I go here. This one, I think I saw, like a triangle here because of this muscle right in here comes in. And then ow! Joy, she just dug all of her claws into me and we haven't cut her claws in a while. So you have, this horizontal tube, which if you want to keep going straight up to get the angle, you can see where it kind of meets here, which is like, you can see that this is similar to this angle. So if you're measuring down, you get it. And then I did the same thing for here. I started basically blocking it out like this. So then when I went to go draw like muscles, I knew the angle that I had to contend with for, you know, that. So it's like, I don't have to think about both like the angle of the curve and the angle that it's like the two start end points at the same time. I'm saying, here's the start end points. Now I can focus on the gradual angle, or the, you know, if it's like a bigger angle or a shorter angle or a more shallow angle. I only have to do one thing at a time, basically. You have that, and then, you know, again, this is how I think of what I'm drawing. Because also I think in all angles. As you can see from my original drawing, it's a lot of angles. And I keep the same thing here. The diagonals that I was talking about, you start as simple as possible because it's a lot to comprehend. And also, when you draw models, a lot of the times the best way to approach it, and it's I don't know how to phrase this without sounding like a jerk, but is to no longer see what you're drawing as what it is. Because if you start thinking, I'm drawing, you know, in this case, I'm drawing a woman, I'm drawing a muscular woman, then you immediately put in all of these rules of like what you have in your head as a muscular woman. Right, so now you start thinking about what you know in your head of female physiques or how they think muscular is going to work. So you just break it down into shapes, lines, and angles. I have a line that goes diagonally here, right? And what that line is that when I did my start angle, end angle, I go like that. I did this for the leg. When I wanted to draw this leg, I wanted to know how far out this knee went and where to stop it. You want to draw literally what you see and not what you're thinking. And a lot of the time you don't even notice that your brain is pushing in its own thoughts. So you want to try to like trick it into no longer doing that. So I got this angle of like how far out by trying to guess, you know, in the best I could, the negative shape from this leg here, the top of this leg, to the top of this knee, right? So if you go across, then you have like this shape, right? So when you go to draw your figure drawing, you can see that shape here, right? You see? So I got that pretty close, not exact, but I'm not going for exact because the second you aim for perfection, you're going to put too much pressure on yourself, and then you're going to get too precious, and then you're going to get too worried, and there's going to be too much pressure, and then it's going to just snowball. It's why the first page of your sketchbook is always normally a garbaggio. At least mine are, and all my friends. It alleviates the pressure. I am just doing figure drawing today because I want to get pretty in-depth with how I go, and I'm going to try my best to do a drawing. My method kind of goes, I just keep going with this. So then I get, and I block it out in segments. So my exact process is I go, okay, I'm seeing this angle, I do that. Seeing this, you know, I went through the whole thing, right? And then once I have this kind of blocked in, oh, also for hands, I think of it just like, you know, that. So then I have those shapes in here, because then when I move on to, you know, this arm, I'm going to need this curve because it's going to change the angle of this shape here. Let me pull out a different color for, this is like the negative space, point to point. So these vertical and horizontal lines I'm seeing in the reference, I got to basically the top of this rib cage here. I drew the slope of the chest here, and then I got to the top and I was like, how far up do I go with this? How much forward is she being pushed up? But since I drew this arm here, I'm like, okay, where does it wind up? Or where does it line up, rather? So I go, okay, highest point of the top of the chest, which lines up with the top of the rib cage. I just go across. And you can see that it lines up with the top of the elbow. So when I drew it, I said, okay, I'm going to go across. And I don't want to, usually I don't draw over the reference. I usually just eyeball it and I try my best because I feel like that is the stage that I'm in right now for drawing, but I've done it for years. I've done this specific kind of drawing since I was like in elementary school. I drew from reference all the flippin' time. I drew from photos and I didn't try to add anything. I didn't try to take away anything. I didn't try to make it a different style. I just tried to get as, photorealistic as possible. So there's that horizontal line. And that, I had to draw a horizontal line here because there is a slight bump here. It's like slight, if you go down on that slope, there's like a slight, like where her tummy pops up a bit because you have, muscle there and stuff like that. So I wanted to say, where does the crest of that stomach line up? I drew a horizontal line across, and it seems like I got that wrong in my drawing. I haven't checked myself in my previous drawing. That wasn't the point. And my mom can attest to this because we were literally just talking about it. When I was a kid, I would lock myself in my bedroom. I would literally lock the door in the bedroom and I would sit for at least 8 hours drawing from a single reference photo. Because I was I was an insane child, and I have workaholic issues. But tracing is really, really good for beginners, like, what I'm doing now. A lot of people even use rulers. Going back to it. These horizontal lines here, like I have vertical. I have two vertical lines here. You can see I have one at the crest of the rib cage. Oh, Joy sees a bird and she's going bonkers. This is also not a very traditional way of doing it, I don't think. Because I kind of made it my own. I had professors that wanted me to draw out the full, okay, here's the circle for the head. This would be the line. Here's this. Then you have the spinal line. And, you get the basic shapes of a torso and stuff like that. And that never worked for me. So I made my own little process. When I was working right, I got to the crest of this rib. And I said, okay, where does the bottom of the back line up? Because I'm doing this sort of straight across form. I was saying, where does this point line up? That little where the angle severely changes, right? The angle shifts here. But okay, where does that line up with what I've already drawn? It lines up with the crest of that rib. So I made a vertical line. And again, I was a little bit off, but I was eyeballing this when I originally drew it. And then I said, so for the next part, going back to the back, the spinal line, basically, when this angle changes, how long is this angle here? Let me just change back to my blue. How long is this thing, this line? Well, let's eyeball it. Let's see where the butt is. Let's try to guesstimate the distance. Let's get, this kind of shape in or whatever. And I said, okay, it's about here. It's kind of where the butt starts. That butt curve starts. It would be just at the end of this basic triangle and a little bit more. That's how I always think about it. This little bit of this angle and a little bit more. That's where that line is. And I realized I should have, everything needed to shift to the right a little bit. But again, I was eyeballing this. That's how that works. So basically I just keep going. I use that rule as we go. You can see I made a vertical line here because this foot was the last thing that I drew, as you could probably tell by the lack of detail. Can I help you? Do you want in on this class too? Oh, no, you just want to steal my pen. This is cool. Can you leave? Joy, listen, I'm in the middle of something. Thank you. She understood. This is how I do my process of drawing from any sort of reference. Unless I want to do it very fast and do something more gestury and not photorealistic. Oh yeah, then I had the angle of the foot here. And I saw it as a this sort of deal. Because it's the toes and this, where this triangle is forms like a bit of a triangle, and I said, okay, I want to bring that into this. So as you can see, boom, yeah, boom, boom, boom. I want you in my room. Yeah, and again, I kind of had that off, but I was eyeballing it, and this foot was the last thing I drew, and I wanted to be done. Do I have any tips for pencil and paper? You can do exactly this method using a ruler. Just get a ruler out or a straight edge, put it on the reference that you're using, try to guess the shape. I'm going to show you exactly how I do figure drawing now. All right, I'm going to use the same model that I used before. I'm going to use this image, why not? For anyone who is doing this on Photoshop and wanted to know what the hell I just did, was that I have two files open. I have my current drawing file and my reference on a different file. And then I went to Window, Arrange, and Tile Vertically. It's a good way to have your reference and your drawing canvas on the same screen. Joy is demanding my attention, and this wouldn't be a problem normally, but Jacob's in the shower. So she is just being a butt. She's literally in front of my Cintiq screen. Like I can't draw. This is where my hand would be if I had to draw. But I have cat butt in the way. So let's do our best here. Okay? Again, I don't know how else is gonna go, but we'll see. I guess we can start with the head here. So I'm going to, it's also hard because I'm not used to drawing this way. I'm not used to having the reference on the screen. All right. So again, we're seeing the angle of the face here. I'm gonna look at, you know, where the most solid line is. Let's say it's, you know, let me pull out a red. It's probably like this, more or less. So I'm gonna, first of all, I'm gonna get rid of that. Oh, I drew on the reference, that's cool. So I'm gonna follow the curve of this circle. For anyone who doesn't know head anatomy from basic building blocks, let me just go over this too. Here's the circle. If I could draw a damn circle. God damn it. I can draw a muscular human. I cannot draw a circle. Center line. Center line. Center line is obviously the center of your head. Straight down the middle. Center line here, so your eyebrows are going to sit. Your nose is going to sit here too. If you go up a little bit from the bottom of the circle, you get the nose. If you go down a little bit from the eyebrows, you get the eyes. The eyes are going to be, if you go halfway between the middle lines and the side here, that's where your eye is going to sit. Your eyes also are one eye width apart, usually. Also, I'm just doing this very fast, so this drawing, not very good. The top of your ears usually hit your eyebrows. It's the same line as your eyebrows. The bottom of your nose, I mean, the bottom of your ears hits the bottom line of your nose, but since, you know, faces curve, you know, like that, it's going to sit a little bit higher, usually, so it won't, like, hit that line. Okay, also this goes straight down, ish. Go in. Your mouth usually sits halfway in between your nose and your chin. So if you go halfway, whoops, that's not halfway. There you go. And your hairline starts about the same distance that your nose starts from that bottom of the circle to the top, but from the top. So, sky is a flat top, which is cool. 3/4 view, same rules. If you have circle here. So if you want to do 3/4, basically what 3/4 means, it's that your head is turned 3/4. So you're going to shift this center line 3/4 that way, which means that you're going to have 3/4 of the rest of the head left. So you have here, we've split this circle into a half. Let's split it into quarters. That's your 4 quarters. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you draw a center line here, that's what 3/4 means. So you have the eyebrow. Basically, you just want to keep going with that. You have your eyebrow. Nose pops out. Still follows this line. Halfway. I should probably do this in a different color. Here you go. As we go along. And, you know, people might have a difference in this. Like, their chin might be a little bit longer. But whenever you think, like, wow, they have really long ears, it's because they don't adhere to this rule. You know, this rule where everything lines up like textbook. People who have long chins, their mouth is going to be a little closer to their nose, and then this is going to have a little bit more distance, like Caldwell's face. You know, you have a little bit more chin. You get that, you get this, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Hair, again, that line. Anyway, that's it. Also, some of my favorite things to draw are ears, because I just have them memorized and they're so intricate and it looks so cool when you draw it correctly, but it's just like I just have the damn thing memorized at this point. You have a lot of face symmetry. Ears line up with eyebrows, nose, mouth. The tips of your mouth line up to the middle of your eyes. I have a smaller mouth, so it doesn't. But if you go like straight down from here, the center line, the mouth is going to go, you know, closer, whatever. It's a whole thing. Let's get back to the figure drawing. I'm going to focus really on figure drawing. Something that we were debating, you know, is doing some sort of art class. But I'm just trying to help people out and show them how to draw from reference. Joy? I'm gonna kick your butt. Stop. She just like walks over and knocks everything off my desk. Let's get back to this figure drawing. So we have this here, and a lot of it is just like eyeballing it, but that's how you learn. So it just goes like a little bit out. I'm just gonna guesstimate for the sake of the stream and, you know, keep things moving so you guys can see how I do the important stuff. So then I'm looking at this angle to try to figure out like how this hair is moving, right? Because where the hair is coming from tells me at what point of the head we're at, right? So this line is like almost completely horizontal and then goes up, right? Because that's how hair kind of moves. It's in this weird rhombusy shape. So if we come down and we go, you know, straight across here, we get this hair shape. So we got these bangs, and then we get, you know, the angle of this face. It's going to be a lot of push and pull. And again, this method isn't going to work for everyone. This is just what works for me. But I was getting a lot of questions about it on Twitter, so I figured I would go over it. So this ear hits about center of this line here, right? Woo! People are hooting and hollering outside. So then this ear kind of follows this line here, right? Kind of goes up more, like this disrupts this hairline. So then we get angles of this face. This is the cheekbone that you see here. And let's see, you know, where the bottom of like this chin shape is gonna go. Let's go straight up. Where does that line up? The center of that circle that we drew for the bun. So I'm constantly referencing previous things. Again, this isn't going to be my best drawing because I'm not drawing the way that the setup I usually do, but whatever. So if we go straight down. Also, a shortcut for people who are maybe drawing on Photoshop. If you hold Shift when you draw, you make a straight line. Let's see. Yeah. So basically where this angle hits is the start of the shoulder muscle. You know, where this chin hits. Guys, I only have the Venga Boys stuck in my head because they tweeted at me. Do you know how much that, like, made my day? I've been having a bad week. I've been a bad and frustrating week. But the Venga Boys tweet, phenomenal. Let's do that. So then, you know, we get this shoulder here. You can check this angle. It's very slight compared to our little vertical line here. Let's see. Now I'm wondering how far down this thing is. This little, the peak of this. So let's reference something we already drew. Let's go to the face. Let's try to make that shape here. There we go. Then it basically goes straight down. I know that Jacob draws using basic shapes, and he likes to build out the skeleton first. Then we got this shoulder muscle here. And it's also important to, you know, kind of not like think about what you're drawing, meaning like I said before, don't think about the thing, the person that you were drawing, think about the shapes. But it is important to note why you're drawing things the way you're drawing them. So like this shoulder muscle, it's because this lady's jacked, right? She's got this big shoulder muscle. She's great. She's got stronger muscles than me. She can tear me apart. So I want to know how far this crest of the shoulder goes. A little bit to the side of the bun, but still in the bun. Oh, I got that pretty right. So then this dips no more than like halfway between those two lines. Then you got this lady's crazy bicep. And then again, because I've drawn these two horizontal shapes going, you know, vertically, I get this negative shape here to kind of figure out the angle that the shoulder and the bicep are going to come out. So shoulder, bicep. Okay. And in my head, I'm noting like, okay, it's more of like a hill, or I come up with like terms that relate to something in my brain. You know, this is very hill-like because it's big, but it's gradual. This is very just like almost triangular, a smooth triangle. So I'm noting that, and then I'm noting that on this slope back down, it's less severe. This is a hard angle to draw. I don't know why I picked this photo. I think it's because the angles were cool. I thought maybe I could do it. I can't. Let's go to where the shoulder hits. When the shoulder hits, you get there. It's basically top of the bun. Again, I'm referencing something we've already drawn. I'm building on top of stuff that I've started. So let's just go horizontally. So we have her, let's actually go in a little bit more, because it's like the shape here does this, you know? So I want to kind of keep that. She has like a thicker neck. I messed up somewhere in here, but whatever. Again, for now, I'm just trying to show you guys how this is how I do it. Yeah, seems about right. So I'm looking at a bunch of my shapes here. Like I'm looking at this shape and here, this little shape. And I'm seeing, okay, I have that shape here. So I have lots of things to reference. As we go on. All right. So that hits about there. We go up, we get that shape for that shoulder. I should also say some other important points of measurement. There's a way that you can measure the human body using the person's head. I think the head is like, the body is typically in like the ideal drawing proportions, whatever it is, like the, whatever. Again, like the face, you know, things line up. There's like a magical combo for art too, but whatever. People are not built exactly the same, so things are different. But like a human body is like a head to the side. Like if you took your head and you put it to the side, that's like how wide you are. Then it's like 7.5 heads tall or something, or 6.5 heads tall, or 8 heads. It's a whole hodgepodge. Your foot is the size of your head. I will demonstrate. See? And it's also this. So if you measure your foot, it hits be just on top of the bicep, and it hits your wrist. I have kind of bigger feet, so to get the angle of this arm, as I sketched out in the other reference, it hits just about here. It goes kind of across here. Just now following the angle of this arm, where the arm meets the scapula there. Again, I drew a lot of, I wonder if I can find a picture of it, but I have a drawing from when I was a kid, drawing that I was pretty proud of. Oh, there it is. Personal Instagram, which is just for my family and my close friends. So this drawing I drew from reference from when I was a child. I drew a picture of Marlon Brando. There you go. I drew that from reference when I was a kid. I used the same method that I'm using now. I did, basically I can tell you that when I lined up the eyes, I went, like, you know, here's this direction, top of the head, bottom of the head, went around. But I was measuring, like, the angle of the nose kind of goes like this. Angle of this thing kind of goes like this. Angle of this bottom kind of follows, you know, the angles of the eyes. So let's try eyeball it to make it the same. Let's do that. I had the circle here or whatever. But yeah, I was just breaking down everything into shapes even then. This is always just how things have worked for me, because I didn't take art classes. You know, just breaking it down into basic shapes. But I always drew from photo reference. This was like a pull out of a magazine that I stole. Not stole, but yeah. It was in my cousin's house. And I was on vacation, and I locked myself in a bedroom for 8 hours when I was visiting my cousins. Wasn't the nicest move I've ever done, I guess. It was kind of rude of me, but whatever. Let's get back to this one. We have, you know, we were drawing sort of this thing. And I'll back up a lot when I'm drawing, like, you know, basic shapes to just be able to reference back and forth a little bit more easily. And again, going back to referencing things we already know. So where does this hit? Well, we drew some stuff from the right. So this point hits bottom of the ear, which I messed up somewhere, so that's not right. Again, we're not going for perfection here. I'm just wanting to teach how I do things. So I drew, you know, basically where this one starts, right? And I'm going to get the basic angle. It'll follow that line at the top. Now, you notice that this line doesn't go straight down. You have a bit of a bend. So I'm going to draw this triangle, essentially. Go straight down, a little bit of a bend. That's where that curve's going to be. Now, if we go back to our reference, you can see that the side of this woman's spine, or the woman's spine, the ribs are also coming from that point, and they're going, you know, they're a little bit above it, but not too much. I'm seeing what the relation is between this shape that I drew and this one. So it kind of does a little mouth. So I want to draw that shape here, which means like, okay, I have to make this go a little bit higher. I have to make this go a little bit lower. I have to widen it just a smidge. So then I'm going to say, okay, this bicep, the side of the bicep here, sits on top of this line. And again, I'm not thinking about muscles. I'm not thinking about how anything is built here. If I'm drawing from reference, I'm just drawing what I see, right? My job is to replicate it as best I can right now. So if you go to this bicep here, you see that if I were to draw a line here, let's do this with the pencil tool, goes up just a smidge, but it looks a little bit more extreme here because of the lighting. But since you're drawing that diagonal, you've broken it down. And also you're tempted to draw a bigger bulge there because you see a little hint and you're like, oh, that's where the bicep sits. I'm going to push it. You thought, okay, there's a bicep there. I have to really push it, but it's just like a hint of a sit. So then we want to see, okay, where does this elbow hit? You know, where does basically the bottom, I'm going to say the bottom of like this shape sit. You know, so now we have this shape here. We have this shape. How's that? Gotta go in a little bit more. How's that? Just about. Yeah, that looks about right. Another rule when you're looking at it, this is something to keep in mind, is that the bottom of your elbow basically hits the bottom of your ribs. You know? So you can see that here, the bottom of a rib cage would be around here, and this is swinging. So that's arms swing out because they're going from here. It's not a straight line. Your whole arm isn't leaving your body. It's gonna swing back and forth from this pivot point, like a little metronome. So that would be about the bottom of the ribs. Yeah, and your elbow goes to the top of your head because, again, your foot is this distance between your bicep and your wrist, and your foot is also the size of your head. Yay! And we're going to worry about shading and everything that's on the inside later. We're getting the big stuff. So we are getting a curve here, you know. But again, curves are hard to measure the angle of the severity of it. So we break it down into triangles. So that's why we were doing this thing, you know, and this, because then you can get like a that. It looks very complicated, but you're breaking it down step by step to see the angles, the negative shapes. The negative shapes are super helpful. It's just a lot of fun. It's basically so that you don't feel so overwhelmed when drawing like a whole ass human. Now, I was looking at this here. You know, there's a bit of an angle here, and then it goes straight. So, a bit of an angle here, and then we do this gradual diagonal. I'm also here to remind you that if you haven't had any water, have some water. I'll be getting water in a little bit. We have that angle, right? We're gonna...
Hi, everybody.
Jacob's here.
I'm here. I brought coffee.
Jacob brought coffee.
Hi. Can I put it on there?
Yeah. Oh my God, that's hot. I'm gonna go back to this because I want to do it basically in section chunks moving to the left, not like, you know, from right to left or left to right, not like top down, at least for the purposes of this image. So we have the elbow hitting right here. So it's just where the bun is, just past where the neck hits the hair. So we have this bicep shape, which then we're going to go back in, go down. And that's where the elbow is going to hit. So then we have, the beginning of where the back muscle. So the space where the back hits the shoulder is about the same line that it lines up basically exactly with this elbow, right? And I'm just looking at the general sort of shape here. And where does this end? It's a little bit past the trapezius here. Hey, I got that right. Animal. I'm gonna switch to webcam for 1 second because this is what Joy wanted the whole time. So anyway, we have that shape. Then we have basically a perfect vert. Hits about where the shoulder is. So then it goes back down a little bit. Where does the booty start? I don't know. Back here, maybe? Now this booty goes this way. So this basically follows, this line here. Then we go basically perfectly horizontal. We go up. Then we get the hand somewhere in there. So you guys see what, my aim is here, right? Just breaking it down into simple, comprehensive shapes that I can constantly measure back to things I already drew, which sometimes, if you don't start off strong, can be hard. But just take your time, go and fix things if you need to. I'm trying to just explain, because I was getting a lot of questions on Twitter about how I do drawings. For next, let's go back to that quickly. Next, I don't really have a trick. I know basically how they are formed. Oh, also your eye sits into your skull, so always push it more to the right than you think. I always push it too far to the left. I'm always like, that's where the eye sits, right? So the back of your head, and you can feel this now. If you feel like under your hair, you can feel like the bone, your bone skull here goes straight into these beefy neck muscles. If you start going back, you feel it. So you're gonna feel that your head swoops into this neck, right? Then you have this muscle, which starts at your clavicle here. Then it goes up diagonal and goes right behind your ears. And you can see it when you twist. That's why it's straight when someone's looking to the side. So when you're looking forward, right, it's gonna not pop out as much because it's not being activated, but you are going to see it, especially on stronger people. So you see this muscle kind of going up and behind the ear, right? Because it's, again, to help you push and pull your head, right? So you get this slight angle on that. And then you have your throat here. Your little voice box, whatever. It's gonna come up where the back of your mouth is, which is vaguely here, right? On men, they have, well, not strictly men, but some people have Adam's apple. Women have it very, very slight, if at all. So for men, people have Adam's apple, sorry. Comes out and tucks back straight against this. So you can draw your throat here, which curves around, because if it goes up, again, you can see that it's only slightly curved. And then sometimes, depending on the angle, you can draw the other side of this muscle, especially on more muscular people, you can have that muscle pop out on the other side. Again, clavicle, this little bump here that's really soft. You have this really soft little bit, this little pocket, and it goes into that muscle that helps turn your head. But then you have your trapezius, which starts not too much lower than your chin. So if your chin goes across, like this. And it's usually a little curved. You can see that on, again, if you really want to study musculature and see like the extremes and like have it really exaggerated so that you study more muscular people. So you have that curve. And then you have, the clavicle sticks out again. And then a lot of the times you'll get that shoulder muscle. It's just like looking and observing and studying a lot and drawing a lot. I'm not studying a lot, but like drawing a lot. And you'll get it. So yeah, then you have like that, again, more muscular people. That's where the muscles meet, is on the sternum. Basically, my non-helpful answer to necks is just know the big basic muscles that you see. These two know where the neck roots. So it's like back of the head curves in a little bit and then goes into the back. And then you have your throat here. Let's get back into this drawing. Just kind of a bless this mess situation. But so your spine, which is here, hits usually the center of your head, obviously. But since this person is twisting, it's going to curve up and around. So top of the spine here. Top of the spine to you. So this is a little to the right here. And this is, I'm just going to eyeball for the sake of, moving on a little bit. But you can see, again, I'm looking at the general angle of this spine. Again, if I'm looking at, compared to this vertical, that's the shape that I want to hit. I want to hit from here and here. I want to get that, spine across angle. You see? And then there's a bunch of nuances to this line, but I have the angle, so I can focus on the nuances and not, trying to contend with the angle of the whole dang thing and the nuances and stuff like that, as I'm breaking it down to being, what is the information I need right now? So we can see, so this curve mimics, I'm talking about this curve mimics this curve a little bit. So you see, we have a curve here, we have a curve here, and that is at this angle. So we want to go at that angle. And when I'm talking about angles, I'm talking about what's like a measurable point. Again, it's all about measurable points. It's like, if we're looking at this shape like this, what is the highest point? And then what's the highest point for this? Well, let's go from the highest point of that outside, line to the highest point of the spine line. We go across. That's our point. That's our olive. Get your booty off the floor tonight. So another thing that's fun that lines up in this image is this elbow and this bootay. The bottom of the bootay. So let's line up the bottom of the bootay with this horizontal line that we have, right? So we have it just kissing that line a little bit, okay? Then we want it to leave. We want it to kiss and leave, okay? So we got them little handle meets right here. We go into the bootay, follows that line that we were talking about, right? That measurable line. Then, where does top of this butt cheek start, really, officially? Almost just before line touches that. And where does it start? Oh, about the top of the wrist here. Top of the wrist to you. Right? So we want it to line up there. And again, let's see this curve. This curve is a little hard to measure. But if we get this point to the bottom of the pelvis, which is that bony part when you sit and you hit it, bony part of the pelvis, the inside of the knee, which has that tendon that is hard, we measure that. Then we can do like an angle from there, right? So we have the angle of this bootay. So I basically start switching like what I'm drawing based off of like, am I losing like enough reference checkpoints with what I'm currently on? So like, I don't know how far out the butt cheek goes because I don't have a reference. I could use that forearm as a reference, but I don't have that right now because I didn't draw it. So let's go back and let's draw it. So this vertical line, right, that we have here, right, we have that line drawn here. This reference line tells us on the arm what should be happening. So we go up a little bit. So what's like the angle here, right? We can basically say it's almost straight across. So let's go straight across. We'll go up a little bit. And then we'll go down. So let's see how we can measure the distance of this wrist, right? Because that would be our next like big changing point in this drawing. We could do a wrist to the top of the shoulder, and then we get this general shape here, which might be the way that we go. Because we know it's ballpark this area. We've guesstimated it's ballpark that area, right? That seems about as right as I care to be with it, right? So we go up, and let's see where the top of this hand hits. Middle of this bun here. This angle of this shoulder, and just before it hits the bicep here, right? So we can say, let's hit, it's about here. Yeah. Right? So that is how we can measure where that wrist is and where that hand is. Hands are a nightmare to draw, but if you stop thinking of them as dangly doogly little monsters, let's focus on just this hand. You have some basic building blocks of a hand. It's a thin square or like rhombus, right? So you have, let's do the top of the hand. You have this, this, and this, right? You have this, 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 right? So then your wrist would connect here, your wrist would connect there. Bottom of the wrist, top of the wrist. Then you have your knuckles. We'd have 4 knuckles here. Let's just do this. Let's make them come out a little bit, right? Let's give them a little spheroid shape, right? That would be your hand. Then they're just a series of cubes. My favorite way to draw hands has been watching Jacob draw hands. Because Jacob, when he draws hands, he's like, generally, what do I want the wrist to be doing? So if I want a hand pointing like that, you know. So I want, you know, I'm just going to draw the gist of a hand pointing. That's like where the knuckle is, and then comes down. Like, don't get specific. Also, if you're someone who does a lot of round shapes, like Jacob does like, you know, something like that, and then he, you know, goes like that. And then once you have this basic building block thing, then you can work in the details. So then you can do, here's the top of the finger. Here's 1 joint, 2 joint, 3 joint. 1 joint, 2 joint, 3 joint. Because remember, your fingers, it's meaty down here, bony up here, right? So you're gonna get bones here. And then when your finger curls up, it's gonna get all wrinkly and scrunchy. I'm trying to like show it, but it's hard. Because that's the part that like scrunches up like a stress ball. You know, so then you have, like, top of the finger would be here. And it's going to be curving. Like, you're so tempted to put in so many details for hands. And this is what I'm saying about figure drawing, is that you can get bogged down in details. Don't get bogged down. Just start from the basic shapes. What is the general line here? What is this general line? It's a wider triangle that starts here to a thinner triangle, you know? So you can start like that. Start basic shapes, break it down. And then you're like, okay, finger, that's the side of the finger. Oh, this one sticks out a little bit, but it still lines up. Just like, if it's not working, break it down into just some small shapes, some small directional lines. And then you have a knuckle here. Some of your knuckles don't really show up. Like the one that shows up most prominently are your pointer finger and your middle finger, because those are your two strongest fingers other than your thumb. And then two of your fingers are connected. I believe it's your ring finger and your middle finger. Like they share like a muscle or something. So your middle finger shows up the most. Pointer finger shows up. Oh, it's ring and pinky. Thank you. Yeah, because I remember it was like, we used to have some game where like if you put your fingers down and then you try to move one of them, it doesn't move. But I couldn't remember what it was. So it just gets broken down into, then you have like the cheek here, the meaty. It just, I feel like the biggest trap the artists fall into is thinking that, like, seeing a thing and going, oh my god, it's so complicated. It's not complicated, it's just a series of lines. You have to stop thinking it as a whole thing. You just have to view it individually. So this is actually a little bit lower because the bone, again, so you have the knuckle here. This finger is going to come up a little bit and then go down. So again, we can break it down like this. Like, I drew the angle for this hand wrong because I didn't check this angle. I know that I got bogged down in hands a lot, and I still do. And every time I talk to Jacob about it, he's like, why are you making it so complicated from the get-go? Story of my life, really. Also, there's a measurement about hands. It's about the size of your face. So then, same thing with the hands. Let's see the turn here. What is this basic shape here? So, let's see. If we want to go straight across, because again, curves are hard, it would be like this, this. Nope, it's a little bit wider. And we can check how wide this is by getting into this forearm spot. So let's see the angle here. Where does this line up? A little bit past the butt curve. You know, so that's when it starts swooping back up. Yeah, Jacob can just whip out a hand.
I did, for a period of time, practice hands exclusively for several days.
There you go.
And at the end of that period, I emerged like Jesus rolling away the stone. And I came out able to draw hands better than I did before. Also, and I've told this to Julia before, whenever I'm drawing, the only things I care about are whatever's the most expressive.
Yeah.
And faces and hands are both very expressive parts of the body. So I focused on hands a lot because it sold a lot of expressions, and since I was doing comics.
Yeah.
The hands were an important delivery tool for comedy and feeling. You focused on me, but I'm done talking now.
So, you can see I drew a little nexus here, and it's just to see if I can line it up with anything that I've drawn before. Something that kind of lines up is the top of this ear. And we can line it up even with this little section. So, wow, then I was wrong about... I told you I got the whole head wrong. Let's ignore the head that I've drawn, because it's bad. It's bad and not good. Because I was still in stream talk mode. And I apologize. Let's just, We're going to ignore that head that I drew. It took me a while to warm up because it's a lot of pressure drawn in front of over 600 people and teaching. I crumble under pressure. All right, so this elbow is a bit behind here, and it has a bit of this angle. And same thing here. You have that muscle that comes in on the elbow. I say you, I mean not me, because my muscles are trash. We have the cylinder that gets met. It's just hard. Drawing's hard sometimes. I'm trying. So let's go up. This finger is thicker than I drew it, which would solve so many of my problems. If you're running into a problem like, wow, this finger is too thick, or whatever, it's probably because you didn't make the other one thick enough. There's like a balancing act there. You know, when you're referencing one thing to measure out other things, it's like, oh, you probably got one other thing wrong. So sometimes you gotta fix something while you're working on something else, and that's fine. Okay, and you see what I was talking about, these muscles, these little, I mean, I guess they're not muscles, they're tendons. So then, this, where the thigh hits, is a little bit past there. So then, let's see this thigh angle. It's about that. Yeah. So see, now we've come back around, and now we have points to measure the bootay with. I realize it's getting a little complicated with all these lines in here. I'm sorry. I just want you guys to see what I'm referencing at all times for the sake of learning. Let's see where this hits. It's a little bit past the finger. So here, let's see here. This little, the little pelvic bone there, right? So it's like almost parallel with that top thigh line, but not exactly. So that's not too bad. Let's see where that angle is. It's a little bit. And sometimes I will draw in the shadow because it might be the only reference that I have. You know, like I might draw this shape, this weird B shape. Use anything as a handhold, as a reference, something to really hold on to. I don't know. It's, again, I taught myself how to draw from reference. And sometimes you got to break some habits and learn the right way, but this has always kind of worked for me. I know that when I did finally go to college for art, I was taught, like, you know, section it out, figure out the whole 3D part, but this is what works best for me. I'm not good at curves. There we go. And then it's going to go into this. Right? And this, a little bit higher. And it comes in just below the crest of the bootay. So then we go a little bit further. Go down a little bit. What's the angle on this leg? So I'm going from, you know, two straight points. Like this is kind of straight and this is kind of straight. So I'm connecting them. Had it right the first time. There we go. There we go. Curve starts about the top of that thigh. So you can see from just eyeballing it because they're right next to each other. This ends about mid-shoulder. So let's see the rest of this angle here. So if we do, you know, that point to that point, you know, we could, well, let's do that. So it's parallel with that previous line that we drew. Okay. And then we do, like, where's this one coming in, right? We're not going to reference anything on the right because I messed up there quite a lot. So we have this line, right? Drawing her leg a little thick. A little too thick. Let's go into rendering. How I would shade this. Let's talk about this arm. Because it's a curved arm. It's actually probably like that, right? And you can see that light is hitting it from like that direction. Not strictly on top, not strictly on bottom. But since it's hitting this kind of angle, we're getting a highlight here. Which means that since it curves, you're gonna get some shadow up here, some shadow down here, and some lighter shadow here. Because you're getting light that's hitting this section and bouncing up, because skin is reflective, it's bouncing onto the arm, right? So for sketching, oh, and also the shadow is darker down here because the light is higher. Try to make note of where the light source is, because you can see that it's like, I guess it's kind of hitting like in that direction, because you get such a clear line here of shadow. You get like very distinct shapes. That's how you know where the light is coming from. You got the reflective light, again, hard shape, reflective light. And then you get some smoother ones, like the smoother transition here. And it's just because of the shape. Let's break down. This is like where the hardest line is for me on shading. So we have that. So, and I'm just going to show you how I did it in the image that I posted. Right, so you have darker there. Then we have lighter here. Remember, since it's going like up and in and like tucking in, it's gonna get darker as it like goes in, because there's not like so much bounce, because it's meeting a dark shadow with a dark shadow. But there's still like a slight gradient here, right? So I'm just going very lightly over here. So we're gonna go lightly here. And, you know, keep in mind that muscles are just everywhere. So the human body's got lumps and bumps. So the way that the muscles on the shoulder work is that you have, I'll draw it really quickly on this image. The way that the shoulder works, right, is that you have, here's your shoulder. We're looking at it from the side. Then you got your bicep. You have muscles here that are made to pull your shoulder up, and they tuck into the muscles of the bicep. And I think you have like a wraparound muscle here to kind of pull it back and forward, I believe is how it works. I'm not 100% sure. But that's why if people got strong, if you have more muscular shoulders, you get that bump. It's because these muscles that are wrapping in and down are bulking up and just like inflating forward, right? Then you have the bicep. There's a bunch of muscles in there. There's like one there. There's one here, I think. It's wild. Anyway, when you look back at the reference, you see that indicated right here. It's very slight, but you see that there's a little shape right here that's lighter. And paying attention to those will really give definition to what you're drawing. So there's this muscle that's wrapping around. There's that one. There's like a bone right here. That's why you're getting this little dent. So when you're drawing shadow, don't just assume, again, draw what you're seeing, not what you think, or not what you're thinking. Because if you're drawing this shoulder, you're like, or this bicep, you're like, oh, it's a cylinder, I'm gonna shade it as this. There's a lot of lumps and bumps there. You gotta pay attention to your lumps and your bumps. So, but this bounce light is not going to be as bright as a highlight. You still have to shade it a little bit. You get this shape in here. So you get this like shape here. It's just breaking it down, drawing some, however is best for you to comprehend what you're looking at. You don't have to tackle everything at the same time. If you do, you will probably get overwhelmed. You know, because people see those like quick Instagram videos, kind of what I was doing before, where I just whipped out a face or a drawing. But that's because I've been doing this forever. Is that I can just... Also, this is like one of my favorite face angles to draw. My other favorite face angle to draw is... That's my other favorite one to draw. And I learned that one because I used to draw a lot of people on the train. And I didn't want them to look at me. Anyway. Those are all the life drawing tips that I have. I'm tired. But I wanted to just explain my basic thought process. That foot is... I mean, the whole leg is some, but... I just wanted to show everyone my kind of process for how I draw things. How I draw from reference, at least. I don't draw like this all the time for everything. It's just for when I'm drawing from reference. If I'm drawing a face, I'll do the same sort of like... see if I can find a fun... Alright, so if I'm drawing like this face... Actually, if I'm drawing from reference, start with a circle. Do this. It's almost half, but not, because you see a little bit of this eye. Cross, cross, cross. You know, and then I'll start measuring out. Or I'll just eyeball it if I feel like not focusing too much. Sometimes I guess this is my warm-up, is that I'll do this kind of thing. Is that I'll start with this nose. This is probably as close to a warm-up as I get. So I'll let myself be a little loosey-goosey with it. Just have fun. That's the most important thing with art, is have fun. Except it's really hard, so it's hard to have fun sometimes. Just remember that art's hard. It's hard for everyone. It's hard for me. I know sometimes it doesn't look like it for whatever reason, but it's hard, guys. Wearing a little bit of makeup. I love that little muscle that goes right there. There's this thing. There's just like fun parts of a face. Sometimes you don't always have to draw all the things that are on the screen, that are in the photo. Anyway, yeah. When I feel like scribbling, I'll pull out this brush and just go. I'll draw little details I think are cool. This is how I do. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for asking me questions on Twitter about how I draw. Please no one flag this. I don't care to start putting... I don't know. Are there like mature content warnings on Twitter? I don't even know. I didn't even look. But again, thank you all for coming. And I hope this helps. We're hoping that in the future we'll start doing like, you know, lessons, like more regular drawing lessons with the crew, but as for right now, everything's on hiatus. So this was just, me wanting to answer questions once, and not on Twitter, a billion times. I'm sure I'll still get a lot of questions, but that's okay. I hope you all have a safe and good weekend. Enjoy the Animal Crossing fishing tournament. That's what I will be doing. After this is the Discord for subs only, or everyone. It's for everyone. So have fun drawing. Good luck. I hope it helps. Don't let yourself get too overwhelmed by what you're drawing. So break it down. Break it down, start referencing other things, start with a good solid base, blah, blah, blah. Enjoy, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night for another video game stream. Goodbye!